Her triumphs, I took a group of women that didn't believe in themselves, and I just believed in them. Her trials,
I never wanted to go to practice. I was losing a ton of weight.
her story,
I just put my faith in God and just trusted the system.
her why.
I want people to see what I did and say, oh, that's so awesome. I'm going to be better than that. That would be how I hope that this journey ends.
This is Her Why, where we tell the stories from BYU women's sports. Here is your host, Lauren McLean.
We're so glad you've joined us for Her Why, where we celebrate the women who makes BYU sports great. And joining us now is Mina Margraf, a junior on the BYU women's gymnastics team. Mina, thank you so much for being here with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, your season ended recently with some important meets, and we'll get into some of those, but how are you giving your body a little bit of a break after such a long season?
So I've taken 2 weeks off after season just to give my body a rest, and I know a couple people are taking time off as well. But yeah, just letting myself relax a little bit, focus on finals, and de-stress.
Yeah. Does your body feel so tense after a whole season? Like, can you feel it in your body? Because that's just so much work.
Yeah, so I personally have a lot of injuries and about to get an ankle surgery, so I definitely felt it. My body definitely went through the ringer this year.
My goodness. You poor girl and all of your surgeries. We're going to talk about those in a little while. Let's talk about the Big 12 championship. BYU took home a third-place finish. Final score of 197.050, which is so good. How are you guys feeling at that meet?
I think we feel just so excited to go into our first Big 12 meet and see all these big teams that we're competing against and being able to keep up. I mean, a 197 for us is huge, and so having 4 judges give us those scores is also an amazing thing. And seeing like Oklahoma and them hitting their highest NCAA score, and even in the history of NCAA gymnastics, that was a really great experience.
And I wanted to ask you about Oklahoma scoring a perfect 10 in every rotation in the meet, what that was like being a member of an opposing team, being able to watch such greatness unfold before you. What was that like?
It was great. I mean, just being there in person, like not seeing it through Instagram or like any other social media, and seeing it in person and just being in awe, because I mean, their gymnastics is flawless. They fly on everything. And even routines that weren't getting the perfect 10s, I would say were near perfect. It was a really great experience, and being able to see that firsthand and on the competition floor with them, that was awesome.
You and I talked about it a little bit before, but what's it like thinking, these are our competitors. These are not someone like you mentioned that I'm watching on social media they're competing in a different conference. Like, this is it. You guys are there. Do you feel like you can reach that same level that they're at?
Yeah, I think a lot of the girls felt that because we were in the same arena as them, competing at the same time as them, and I think it almost like motivated us in a way, because we saw that, and then we got back in the gym and we're like, we can do this. Like, we're at the same level as them. Like, yes, they're one of the best teams in the NCAA, but I mean, we're in the same conference, and we can do this right along with them.
The team also competed in the NCAA regionals. First round, you faced Boise State, which ended up in a tie before eventually winning the tiebreaker. How would you describe that meet?
Oh, man. So, I mean, I compete beam, and so beam was the last event. It was definitely nerve-wracking. In the moment, I was talking to myself, and I was like, okay, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But coming off of floor and like not hitting the scores that we really wanted, it was definitely nerve-wracking, because you could hear the whispers from my team like, oh, like if this event doesn't work out the way we want, then we're not going to win this kind of thing.
Man.
And so when I went up on the beam, I was really shaky, and I know a couple other girls felt that same thing, but I think we kept our composure. And then seeing that tie was just crazy, because on floor, I was like asking a teammate, I was like, what happens if we tie? And I was like, I definitely feel like I jinxed it. But it was really cool. I mean, like, and winning that tie, just like so much stress and so much excitement all at the same time. And yeah, just coming out and winning that was really nice, and giving us a second chance to really perform the next day, like nothing to lose.
You competed on the second day. You scored a 9.850 on beam, helping the team to third place. Were you happy with that score in your performance?
I'm going to be super honest. I wasn't happy necessarily with my score. I was super happy with my performance. And I know with judging, especially at like conference and regionals, 4 panel judges, a little bit tougher judging. So I know they like nitpicked and they found
Yeah.
things here and there. But overall, like, I mean, 985 isn't a bad score.
That's a fantastic score.
Yeah. And so I think, I mean, especially with the beam team and everyone on beam, I think we were super happy with our performance, especially because we got really high beam score all together and we stuck together as a team. So, yeah.
You mentioned that, you know, your teammates were putting kind of undue stress on you, right? Like, oh my gosh, we need this event. How do you mentally handle all of that? Because especially on beam, oh my gosh, well, everything in gymnastics, but beam, one wrong move, right? One slight wrong move and everything can go wrong. So how do you mentally compose yourself before your event starts?
So I have a really like weird strategy, but I like talk to myself and I convince myself that it doesn't matter that much. Like if it's like, I don't know, like I know there's a lot of pressure going into the situation, I'll just be like, no big deal. Like there's no stress. Like, and I'll just like keep talking. I talk with one of my teammates like this, and we just like convince each other over and over that it's not a big deal. And we'll just like dance and like do things and just like relax and calm each other almost. And so it's really nice to have a beam team where like they understand how you work and the best thing for you going into a meet and like right before beam. And I like to talk to a teammate right before I go up. But yeah, I think daily practice, every day at practice, just working on that with the team has been so great. Especially because it translates into a meet.
Yeah, I love that. You just have fun, right?
Yeah.
You just gotta have fun.
Yeah.
You have one more season left at BYU. What are some of the things you're shooting for your senior season?
So I think my main goal is just being relaxed and having fun because, I mean, this year I had so much fun competing. And it was different from the past 2 years where it was very high stress and I almost like I didn't look forward to a meet. I was kind of like, I was scared of it. And I was just like, oh, we have another meet this week. And that's a week-to-week thing, you know? So I think just really going in and having fun, learning how to relax and perform up on the beam, that's really helped me a lot. And going out there and just giving it all I got since it's my last year.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go back in life a little bit. When did you first get into gymnastics? Gymnastics you start when you're tiny, right?
Yeah.
When did you first get into it?
So I started when I was like 2, barely 3. Like I had my birthday like 2 days later.
Oh my gosh.
And I started in Japan. And so
Okay.
that was a very interesting experience because obviously they coach different and there's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't actually join team until I was 8. And so I kind of started a little bit later than some other girls would with team, but it all worked out.
Wow. So do you remember a lot from your time in Japan and being coached there?
Yeah, I remember a lot. It definitely, I wouldn't say it was the best experience, but it started off my gymnastics career, and for that I'm grateful.
What are some of the biggest differences that from, being coached here in the United States versus in Japan?
I think in Japan, it was a little bit more normal to have like abusive coaching because it wasn't regulated as much. And so when I was like pretty young, like 3, 4, I was seeing like these girls get slapped or like dragged by their hair and stuff like that. So, I mean, but I didn't have the concept of like, oh, that's like
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, shoot, like that's scary. But I didn't like go into the gym and be like, oh, that's going to happen to me kind of thing. Like, I mean, I don't know. I didn't think much of it until I got older and I was like, whoa, like you can't be doing that.
When you came to the United States, were you like, you guys are soft here? Like you should have seen what the coaches were doing in Japan.
Yeah, like I mean, I feel like it's a little bit different, like less physical, more mental.
Yeah.
So, like I know that's a big issue with like coaching in the United States is like a lot of like mental verbal abuse.
Right.
So it was like a big shift. But yeah, I think coaching approaches were so different in both countries. So I mean, I'm grateful for both experiences, like besides like I guess the bad
Right.
the bad parts, but
you learned a lot from both.
yeah.
You come from a military home, right?
Yes.
So you've moved quite a bit growing up. What are all the places that you've lived? You mentioned
Oh, yeah.
Japan, and where else?
Yeah, so I was born in Portland, Oregon. We moved to Florida, I think Jacksonville. Then we moved to Sasebo, Japan. Then to South Pasadena, California, Long Beach, California, Honolulu, Hawaii, and then
Wow.
Spring, Texas, and then just recently to Connecticut, Avon, Connecticut. That's where my parents are staying because my dad finally retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your favorite place of all those places that you lived?
Okay, so that would be probably like Japan or Hawaii. I mean,
Okay.
it's really hard to beat Hawaii.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be Hawaii,
yeah.
right? That's awesome. And your mom is Japanese, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How did your parents meet?
So my parents met because my dad was in the military and he was doing medical school over there. And my grandparents had a cafe that my mom was working at, and he would always go there and study. And so my mom, like, she had a crush on him, and she would bring him like little cookies and treats that she would bake. And she was like, she didn't know how to bake super well at the time, I guess. And she said she knew that it didn't taste good and stuff. But he would always be like, oh, it's so good. And then they ended up in like,
Smart man.
yeah, they ended up in the same like work office together. And then they ended up on the same running team, like a marathon running team. And so I guess they were just like, well, I guess this is like destiny because we keep
run
seeing
into each other.
Yeah. And then they started dating.
That's awesome. So your parents are pretty athletic too, it sounds.
Yeah. So my dad used to be a wrestler, and my mom, she used to be a ping pong player, but she
No way.
Yeah. And she was invited actually to the Japanese national team. I don't think she actually ended up going, but she was pretty good.
Are you guys pretty into ping pong then, your family?
No, actually. We do like things here and there, but like, and it's like competitive, but we don't really do ping pong.
Wow.
Which is really surprising, like considering that my mom like is really good at ping pong.
I love that. That is so cool. So your mom speaks Japanese, obviously.
Yeah.
Did you learn Japanese when you were in Japan?
Yeah, so my first language was Japanese. I'm losing it now.
Wow.
But yeah, I learned English a little bit after because they realized we're gonna be moved to the States. And so they put me into like a military school just to learn some to learn some English.
Yeah.
And yeah, from there I just kind of kept speaking English over Japanese.
All I learned was isn't domo? Isn't domo Japanese?
Yeah, domo
okay.
Japanese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad. Okay. So your father's in the military. Besides all the moving around, what kind of an impact did that have on you growing up?
I mean, it was really nice visiting a lot of places and making a lot of new friends. I think it just lacked a lot of stability that
Yeah.
a lot of other people have, and just a lot of homesickness every time I moved from place to place. It definitely, it's not a life a lot of people can live or want to live, and I think that's all I've known. So I kind of like didn't think much about it until like I got to college, and I was like, wow, like I moved so much that I couldn't like make a friend that I could grow up with like a lot of people here have, or there's a lot of things I did miss out on, but I'm super super fortunate to be able to go to all these places and make all the friends I have because we still like stay in touch on Instagram and social media and stuff, even though it's not in person. It's like we still have connections, and I'm super proud of
It's awesome.
being able to say that.
You have the most interesting life because not only were you moving around so much, but you were born with a vascular anomaly or a venous malformation in your cheek. When people ask you what that is, like what's a vascular malformation? How do you describe it?
So I think I've said it so many times that I just shorten it every time, but basically it's just my nerves and veins all bundled up. Instead of being spread out in my cheek, they're just like in lumps. And obviously that's abnormal, and there's a whole spectrum of issues that come with that.
Wow. So you, from such a small age, you were a gymnast, and I read an article, you mentioned how painful it was. So how did that affect you in your competitions and in your training while you were growing up?
Yeah, so during like competition season and practices, it definitely interfered a lot because I would have to take breaks. When I got surgery, I would have to take a lot of time off. Coming back, it was painful. And although people don't think like, oh, your face, like it's involved with gymnastics, like every time I went upside down or anytime I bumped it a little bit, that was a big issue, especially coming out of surgery. And so it definitely affected me in the way like I had to take long breaks, whereas my other teammates didn't have to. And I would come back to gym and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. And then all my teammates are picking up new skills, and I just felt like I always had like catching up to do. And it was every couple months that I would have to go back and get something done with my cheek, or if I wasn't, I would have to just endure with the pain, and I would sit in between turns and have to ice my face before I take a turn, so that it definitely interfered with my practices, but I think even though with all that happening, I'm still glad that I went through that because it kind of gave me a little insight into what maybe others who have conditions like this are going through with not just gymnastics training, but any practice in general, and
Yeah.
just pushing through, like feeling what they're feeling almost.
For sure. Is it something that still bothers you, or is it gone? Is it good?
It's pretty much gone. When I get sick, it's kind of cool because I can feel like it starts to get painful, so I can feel when I'm about to get sick.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah, so it's like I can feel a little bit, or like when a storm's coming in, sometimes I'll feel like a little pressure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But other than that, like kind of, I don't really feel anything. I think still I do feel a lot of insecurity about my looks. And about even though like now it's not visible, like whereas before it looked like I had like a tennis ball in my face. But yeah, I think there's still a part of me that like thinks back on all the times that I went through as a kid and just was like, I wish this wasn't me. I wish like I didn't have this. I just want to be pretty and beautiful like everyone else kind of thing. Like I still have that insecurity like it transferred over to my years now, but I'm still working through that. And
It's hard to let go of, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because that's funny, because from our perspective, you're just gorgeous. Like, just
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
But isn't it interesting that things from our youth and when we're young can stick with us for so long?
yeah.
How did you deal with all of the moving, gymnastics, surgery, school at such a young age? That's a lot for a little kid.
I think my coping mechanism is I don't really think too much. Like I think a lot outside of like busy work, like if it's like school or gymnastics.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing the things that I'm having to do, I try to shut off my brain a little bit. And so I think when I was going through all of that, I didn't really think too much
Yeah.
about it. I didn't really realize I was going through all of that until after, which is kind of nice because like I didn't see it as like, oh my gosh, my life is so chaotic. Like I have to do all these things. It was just like, I did it. And then after I was like, wow, that was a lot.
You're like, I did that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, gymnastics was worth it to you despite some of those challenges because you kept going. What aspect of gymnastics did you find yourself drawn to the most?
I think it challenged me in a lot of ways, and also with my vascular malformation, people didn't see me in public and like, I don't know, like they didn't see me in gymnastics and think, oh, there's a girl with a big lump on her face. Like, I wonder what's wrong. They saw me for gymnastics, and I think I found a lot of power through that. Whereas like in public, like people would come up to me, or it was actually really surprising how it wasn't the kids that were making fun of me. It was the adults. Like I would be at a grocery store, people would puff up their faces. Like from gymnastics, I took a break from all of that. Like I didn't get any of that. I just could do gymnastics, and my coaches and teammates were so understanding. Like, but they didn't see me as my condition. They just saw me for my performance. And so I think, yeah, I found a lot of power from that. And so I just kept going at it.
It's incredible. You started competing level 10, the highest level in the USA Gymnastics Junior Olympic program, in 2018 when you were 15, which is the same year you competed in the Junior Olympic Nationals, and then you qualified again the following year. What was it like getting to compete at such an intense level?
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, nationals was my best experience of competing in the JO level. It was just so, I mean, it was a lot going on. There was all these college coaches there, so many gymnasts there performing at such a high level. But it was amazing because, especially with Region 3, I mean, you usually compete with your team, but at nationals, you get to compete with all these girls from all these gyms around Region 3. Like, that's where I competed. And it was just really, it was a really amazing experience, especially because you get together with all these groups of girls and you have a sense of teamwork and camaraderie that you don't really get in any other situation or setting.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Mina tells us why she chose BYU to further her gymnastics career. This is her why. Welcome back to Her Why. I'm Lauren McLean. I'm here with Mina Margraf from the BYU women's gymnastics team. What was your recruiting process like when your time came to choose a place to go?
So my recruiting process was definitely interesting, especially with all the injuries I've had. It it was tough. I mean, it also went really long, especially because I was talking to all these schools and I was about to go into my second nationals that I qualified to, and I tore my UCLs in both elbows. Following those tears, my right elbow, it didn't hold up, so it tore again, and I had to get Tommy John surgery, which is
My
a
God.
surgery that a lot of baseball players get actually. And it was a long recovery, like a year and a half, and I mean, coaches see that as a liability, and they've told me to, like, on a phone call, they were like, "Yeah, we were looking at you. It was really hard not seeing you at the nationals." Um, and they just usually, I mean, most of them followed up with like, "Oh, the 3 elbow surgeries, that's a huge liability.
Right.
I don't think that this recruiting thing will, like, happen with us." Obviously, they said it in a more elegant manner than
Right.
how I'm explaining, but yeah, it was tough, and hearing that, I just thought my gymnastics career was basically over just because I was like, "Oh, none of these coaches want me. I don't have a chance at competing. I'm, like, about to go into my senior year. Like, this isn't gonna work." And then I get a email from Coach Guard and the coaching staff, and everything kinda changes for me, because I get on a call with Guard, and he's just like, "I believe in you. You can do this. You have so much potential," basically telling me not to give up right when I was about to quit. So that did so much for me.
So what did you know about BYU at that point?
Honestly, not really anything. And I think after I got on that phone call and we just talked for like an hour and a half or something, like a really long phone call. And I got off the phone call and I just started researching. And I mean, I saw the videos of BYU gymnastics and saw that the school or the academics were really good. So I was like, why not? Like,
Yeah.
I want to do this and I want to have a second shot. So yeah, and then I took an official visit and I committed on the spot.
Wow. What was
Yeah.
that visit like? Did you just feel really good about it?
Yeah, it was actually amazing. And so my first visit, there was a storm that came in to Houston, and so I couldn't leave. So all these other recruits got to go, and I just kind of sat on my phone and like watched all their fun experiences. I was like, dang it, I wish I was there. But then Guard like scheduled another official for me, and he made it really fun. There was no football game, but it was still really fun nonetheless. And all the girls on the team like got together and helped take care of me while I was here. So that was a really good experience. And I think that just added to like why I was so sure that when Guard offered me in his office, I took it on the spot because I was like, why wouldn't I? Like, I love everything about this place.
BYU is known for being a religious school, and you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What was that transition like for you? Because that's probably something you maybe don't mentally prepare for until you're here, right?
Yeah, so I didn't think too much about it. I grew up with neighbors who were LDS in
Okay.
Japan, and they took care of us, me and my sisters, a lot, and my family, a lot when my dad was deployed. And so I didn't really have any, like, I had people on my old gym kind of saying stuff like, oh, you know how they are over there. Like, basically talking about, like, LDS people like they're a cult. And in my head, I was like, no, it's not like that because I already had
Yeah.
experiences. But yeah, I think when I got here, there was a little bit of a culture shock just because the culture here is a little bit different than other places.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of the feelings I got that were negative were because I was seeing myself as like, oh, I'm this outsider. I'm not LDS
Yeah.
versus all these people are, and they can get along on this common thing. Like, it was more me seeing this situation as like I'm the outsider versus like letting myself kind of go into like the groups and
Yeah.
letting myself experience everything. But yeah, everyone has been very welcoming. I mean, there was a few people who haven't been, but I mean, like majority of people, really sweet, really nice, made me feel so welcomed.
So you finally got to BYU. You competed in your first meet against Boise State, scored a 9.75 on beam. Were you kind of proud of yourself making it back after some of these just brutal injuries and surgeries?
Yeah, I was super proud of myself. I think in the moment when I competed though, I was just so nervous and shaky that I didn't really like realize like, oh my gosh, after 2 years of not competing, I'm finally competing again, you know? I think later that night it hit me and I was like, whoa, I just competed again, you know, and just going back into season and finding like the way to do things again. I mean, competing after not competing after a long time is really hard. And I definitely had a mental battle with that. I was seeing the sports psychologist, trying to get my groove back again. But yeah, it was an amazing experience nonetheless, just because it was all exciting and like nerves mixed with excitement.
Yes.
But my team was so supportive, and having them by my side and like cheering me on and celebrating me after, it was amazing.
In a BYU Daily Universe article, you talked about mental health and specifically what it's like when you're injured. It mentioned you had 5 sports surgeries since 2019. Were those all on your elbow? Was that all elbow surgeries?
So I had 3 elbow surgeries and then 2 ankle surgeries with one
Man.
coming up.
Man.
So yeah.
So mentally, you mentioned it a little bit, but mentally, what was that like for you being able to overcome all of those injuries and those surgeries to be able to compete again?
So I think, I mean, a lot of that is just overcoming the fear of like not just in competition, but in practices, like not thinking, oh, if I do this, I have the possibility of like, or the potential to hurt myself again. Like I really battle that with vault, because even though I hurt my elbows on bars, I went to vault after and I could feel them dislocating and slipping out, because I continued to practice after I hurt my elbows because I didn't realize they were hurt. But yeah, kind of battling that mental aspect of that and going into practice and trying to like push away those thoughts almost. But instead of pushing them away, I try to replace them with proactive thoughts, because pushing them away doesn't necessarily work all the time.
Right.
And so just practicing that over and over at practice and trying to replicate that at a competition setting. I don't feel like I struggled too much with competitions mentally in JO, which is why I think it helped me a little bit going into college. But I think because there's the difference of like in JO, it's all about you. Your scores are your scores. Like they don't impact anyone else really, versus college, they impact your whole team. And so that switch was really hard for me mentally. And overcoming that was basically just going in and practicing like my mindset every single day, going and seeing sports psychologists, working on how to make my thoughts more proactive, not subtractive, and playing to win, not to lose.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, because when you play not to lose, it makes you nervous, you get all tense. And so yeah, just practicing that day in, day out and replicating that at a meet. That's like my main thing that I did.
So much.
Mhm.
So much goes into it. It's
Yeah.
incredible. You are so incredible. Something else you've opened up about is your sexuality. You're bisexual. When did you decide that's something you wanted to share with everybody?
Yeah, so I think I just like casually came out with that. It was, I believe, my junior year of high school, and I just made a TikTok about how I like both genders. And so it was interesting, like, because I mean, all my teammates supported me and were very happy for me. At the time, I think Guard said he doesn't have TikTok anymore. He felt like it was like too invasive of our privacy. But at the time, I think when TikTok was kind of more new, he was like trying to hop on the trends with all his girls on the team and learn the dances. And he followed my TikTok, so I assumed that he saw my video. And so to me, that was a little bit scary, just because I know that BYU hasn't been the most accepting place in the past. And so that was a little bit nerve-wracking for me. But yeah, I didn't really think a whole lot about that. I just kind of posted the video, and then after I was like, oh, wait, I don't know if I should have done that.
So now I'm curious, speaking of the BYU community, I'm sure you had, mixed feedback. What was some of the support that you feel like you received from your teammates, from the BYU community in general?
Yeah, so I mean, my teammates have been so supportive. Some of them listen to like the podcasts or interviews I've done. And they've just had open conversations with me where they ask genuine questions and they just want to learn more. And my coaches have done the same. They've reached out to me. They've told me that their offices are a safe space, and they're just trying to educate themselves a little bit more and learn more about everything, just because, this topic can be very sensitive, and especially at BYU. And I think approaching it in a certain way is really important, which everyone's done a very great job at. And I mean, they're very sensitive to this topic, which I'm so grateful for.
When people come to you trying to understand sexuality in the LGBTQ plus community, what do you usually tell them? When they just come to you like, hey, I'm just trying to understand, how can I help? What can I do? What do you tell them?
Usually I just tell them to kind of just educate themselves about kind of the church's standpoint, because there's two different things that's been released. I feel like two different messages, but there is an article, or on the church's website, you can read that they don't support like harassment or hate or discrimination against the LGBTQ community. And I think that's a very important message. I talked about this with Whitney, our diversity and inclusion person, and she's done a really great job at kind of making sure people are educated and are knowledgeable about all of this. But yeah, we've had like multiple conversations, and she just talked me over about like what the church's view on it is, and how some other people view it, and not all people view it in the same way. And so I think my thing is just education, just learning about what people might go through, or trying to put yourself in the shoes of someone who is closeted and is too scared to come out because of certain things that you've been saying, or certain things they've been hearing from other people. And just the negative aspects of that, like how is your treatment of these people, like what is that going to lead to?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people struggle severely with mental health, especially involving this, just because of the hate and the discrimination that they feel or experience. And so, yeah, I think the main thing is education, just being empathetic, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and maybe see what they're experiencing or feeling, even though you might not agree with it, or even though you might not like particularly understand it.
Yeah.
I think just being open-minded and trying to be understanding a little bit is the big
amazing.
step. Yeah.
I think that's amazing advice. We're here with Mina Margraf from the BYU gymnastics team. Mina, you are incredible. You have such an incredible story. You have a light about you. You're beautiful. I can't wait to see what you do your senior season. Thank you so much for coming in here with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks also to Annie Robinson and Sydney Simpson for producing this episode. Cleon Wall is the senior producer. Her Why is a production of BYU Radio. You can download and listen to all episodes of Her Why on the BYU Radio app or wherever you find podcasts. Her Why is a production of BYU Radio.